Has anything changed for you? Like, have you learned anything, I guess, as far as how to get better for yourself in your jiu-jitsu training at New Wave? What do you think is the most impactful thing?
So I was talking to Mark about it earlier, and I think the biggest takeaway or just the biggest blessing in it all is I was teaching at my old gym, TNT MMA Training Center, for so long as a coach. And so you adopt a coaching role, your mindset changes a little bit. You're still learning, but obviously you're responsible for the growth of other students. And so with that said, I'm put into New Wave where, hell, I mean, honestly, if I'm being humble about it, there's white belts that know more than me in regards to being under John and the system that he teaches. And so it's like super refreshing and new to like be a legitimate student again. And in my head, I'm just like completely making myself a white belt because it's like, I think I took that process for granted, you know, especially when I did get my belt quickly, like to black belt, I almost took for granted being a white belt and just being able to learn and absorb knowledge and everything. And then when you tandem that with training with the best guys in the world, that's like a bonus for sure. But it's very nice to just focus on learning. I think it's, in the moment, it helps me a lot, but also long term, I'm very excited to see how it helps me.
What's a big, I'm curious about this though. In terms of training there, what is a big difference in terms of the way you see instruction done and the way training's done versus like most jiu-jitsu schools?
I would say that the way John teaches, obviously everyone knows he's very detailed, but it's more so like the depth. Whereas I think a lot of jiu-jitsu schools teach moves as like one and done, or like, here's the move, or here's how you tap him with this. And then it kind of like ends there.
Yeah.
John dives very deep and you can tell that he has like a system. So when he teaches something, he starts with whatever sequence and then everything builds and builds and builds. And it usually builds off of failure from the last move. So when the first move doesn't work, that causes this reaction. Like one of my favorite practices was one of the last ones I went to Friday, where it was me, Big Dan Marigali, and another guy, Silas. And it was a small practice because everyone was at the Dallas Open. And John was just simply teaching what to do when the first or second or third move fails. You arm jack from guard. They stop it. Their head's down. You take it to a front headlock. You get it around to the back. And it's refreshing because I just think a lot of jiu-jitsu schools teach one and done. And like John's like very, very contingent on, hey, like what I'm teaching you, it could work, but there's a high chance that it won't, especially if you're competing against high-level competition. So here's option 2, 3, 4, and 5, that type of thing. So I like that a lot. As far as the structure of the class goes, I love that there's no warm-up. That's my favorite part.
Yes. I like that too.
Yeah, it's my favorite part. The warm up is more like very light, just wrestling drilling. He'll just show us some like light hand fighting type of thing, and that'll usually warm us up. That'll bleed into some wrestling sequence, and then we'll start to go to the ground.
Yeah.
But I do like that the wrestling is covered every single class, and then jiu-jitsu, and you know, for the pro practices, I probably say about 3-ish moves on standing, 3-ish moves on the ground, and then heavy emphasis, as Giancarlo told you guys, on positional rounds.
Yeah.
Mount, back, arm bar, turtle, leg lock, stuff like that. And then we'll have 1 to 2 full rounds at the end, ADCC style usually.
Yeah.
And I would say like the majority of other schools probably don't put as much emphasis on the positional rounds, or if they do, not nearly as much time.
Yeah.
Which I think the positional rounds is a great thing because you think about when I do a full ADCC round with Dan or Luke or Marigali or Giancarlo, like, damn, dude, it's like I did a whole tournament. Like, it's intense. It's like every single second, boom, boom, boom. And I think about, well, what if you did that 5 times a practice every single day? Like, or even if they did that, you know, how do they get as good as they do without accumulating a lot of injury? And I think it has to do with the amount of positional rounds that they do, where they're getting tons and tons of experience in some of the most common positions, but they're not having to go through the wear and tear of like takedowns or guard passing or all these different things and the injuries that can occur when you do that, you know? So, which brings us to why I'm here. But yeah, that's the biggest difference.
Gotcha.
You think it's harder? Was it harder mentally or physically at first?
I would say, because of the knee injury, a combination of both. But mentally, I think it was an adjustment period of moving and getting used to a new environment. And first off, again, I'll say that they are just some of the most friendly people that I've ever met. I'm so glad I picked them. I really am. But with that said, too, like, just being new and like going from being like the guy to no one is a little bit of adjustment period. And like my ego wants to say I'm okay, but even like going there, I'm like, I can feel a sense of being uncomfortable. And even that, I could feel a sense of like, at times trying to talk myself out of not going to practice. Like, oh, I'm going to rest on my knee today. You know, that type of thing. I'll go twice a week this week type of thing. I actually really credit Luke to getting me out of that hole, because one of my biggest problems at the beginning mentally was being new to the technique, being limited because of my leg, and then feeling like I just honestly just suck. And I feel like I'm taking away from the training of my training partner, or to where they would have to slow things down to let me kind of get in a position because of my knee. Maybe I shouldn't feel this way. I just don't really like being that guy. But Luke came back from South Africa, and we were partners that day. And for whatever reason, he really liked training with me. And then every single day after that was like almost damn near a private between him and I, where John would teach a move. He would go in very depth with me and explaining it, and just making me feel very comfortable and very welcomed. And as my knee got better, my confidence grew. And I credit that a lot to like Luke and Big Dan actually for being so patient with me while my knee was healing. So yeah, it was awesome.